Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Hey guys, so I'm coming to you sans one bald boy today. So we're missing Brett. He's off doing
Our quartet is now a trio for today only.
He's off doing amazing things for the community and beginner farmers. So, if you see him out and about, get a little pat on the shoulder and say thanks for being here today.
Or a rub on the head for good luck.
Yeah, but maybe ask first, because I just assume that bald head rubbing is similar to when people think they can rub women's pregnant bellies, which is weird. Okay, if you're one of those people, you're weird.
I can see where that'd be problematic.
Two things. There's no baby in there, so
okay. All right.
Then the other one is Brett's 6'5" or whatever, so not many people can even reach up there.
That's true. All right. Depends on if he's got his boots on or his Crocs on, I guess, if he's 6'4", 6'5". But
a high five will suffice. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable rubbing the top of someone's head.
Right? I'm just kind of maybe we just fist bump even. That's fine. Yeah. Josh is rub my head. So
high five my forehead.
Yeah. Please and thank you.
And then run away before
I was laughing this morning because I was on a Zoom meeting with one of his suite mates, and I see him pass behind her with these bright gold pants on, and so I shot him a text message, and I was like, "Gold pants, really?" And he's like, "They're orange."
There is a difference.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. So if you see Brett out in his orange pants, give him a little fist bump or a little head pat, or
it's trying to bring the color.
Whatever you're comfortable with. Whatever.
I mean, the leaves are falling, and we need the color in their lives.
I know, but he was wearing a blue shirt with it, so it was very Florida Gators.
Yeah,
Gator vibes. I don't know.
I know we're talking about tropical. By the way, we're talking about houseplants today, which I know are tropical and Florida loving, but we're talking about how to bring them inside today. So we need to bring in the cold vibes for this podcast.
University of Florida makes me think of plugging IFAS as a website. Have you ever used IFAS? IFAS? Yeah. It's a nice, tremendous resource for extension publications.
They do. They have a wonderful
Kentucky
website.
Is obviously awesome.
Say it again slowly, because all I hear is a terrorist organization.
IFAS.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. IFAS.
No, I just, I think we've said this before. If you're ever looking up information and you're getting overwhelmed, and you're like, I just want the right answer. Whatever you look up, put CES, obviously me, but just in case, you can put CES behind it, which stands for Cooperative Extension Service. So you're going to get research-based information there. And if you want to be more specific, wherever you are in, the U.S. or whatever zone you're in. So when I look up stuff, I put, I might put houseplants, CES, UKY for University of Kentucky. But if you're in, South Carolina, or if you're in Florida, whatever, you can put whatever what my acronym for them is, and you'll get some good information that way. So there's your fun fact for the day: orange pants and CES in your search bar. So nice. Maybe if you look orange pants CES, you'll come up with a picture of Brett. We're not really sure.
Be precise. Possible. Yeah. I'm sure there's some other people wearing that combo. Yeah. Some other people out there wearing that color combination. Outside of Florida, maybe harder to find. Yeah. Could be.
Well, anyways, jumping back to talking, we talk a lot about farming and outdoor stuff here, but in, Kentucky, it is cold. We've actually had a warm spell this past beginning of November. It's jumped back into the 7. Well, we were close to 80. But
I think it was 80 in Lexington.
Mm-hmm. It was 81 yesterday where I was at, and most of the day, the last couple of days has been unseasonably warm. I think we broke some records in Kentucky.
Yeah,
but it was weird.
Yeah.
I do have to say I was really mad at Mother Nature for freezing, because it was 22 at my farm. October, November 1st, something like that. So I was kind of mad because I was like, really? And then we have these nice days, and it just cut my season off, and so I was a little bit upset. But then I realized Mother Nature's doing me the favor I didn't know I needed, which is very, very typical. She was like, look, you're done, quit, get it over with. But then I'm going to give you some warm days to clean up and catch up on all the things that you weren't doing because you were still doing in-season stuff. So I do have to say I appreciate her for that, and I looked on the bright side.
Well
It's tough
done.
this time of year. I mean, goodness, the temperature yo-yo is,
Mhm.
but, like you said, once we get that hard freeze, hopefully you've already, like, if you had plants on the outside, if you haven't moved them in and left them in place, they're probably not doing really well right now.
They might look
Those
a little slimy, a
they
little
they
bit.
might be a little moist and droopy and dying, yeah. But
Is
There's
it
a
that's tough. That's
is
there
it
tough.
one of those situations where if they're cold, or wait, if you're cold, they're cold, bring them inside?
so
Is
if you
that
see that
But that was stray
raccoon on the
cats.
porch.
Okay, raccoons, stray cats, plants,
Or did
bugs?
you know
bugs.
possums can get frostbite?
I
Hmm.
Their little
I
feetsies and
I
their
guess they're
tails,
mammals.
they can get
Yeah.
mm,
frostbite.
yeah.
So take if you see a possum, Alexis, on
Bring
your
it in.
Give
farm,
it
please
no.
bring it
If you're
in.
cold, it's
Make it
cold.
little mittens. Make it little
Give me
mittens.
little
I'm
mittens.
gonna be crocheting little possum mittens. It's winter, little tail mittens.
Sounds like an Etsy project to me.
Let's put the 4-H clubs on it. Uh,
Yeah.
anyways, if you've not brought your plants in yet, definitely, I know I wait probably an extra week or so from the plants that are up right against my brick house versus the ones that are down further on the steps or maybe somewhere else. I wait, but you've probably brought them in. And here's the thing. So I think we've talked about before when you're bringing your plants inside, in a perfect world, you're giving them this nice, essentially 2-week adjustment period where you're moving
Mm.
them slower into the shade and you're watering them maybe a little less and you're doing all these things in the perfect world. And I'm here to tell you that I have pretty much never done that. So if you didn't do that and your plants are already inside and you're like, it's too late, Alexis, I'm past the point of no return. I get that. I'm there with you. And here is what I have done to help the situation. So I bring all my plants in. Actually, there are some that I don't even put outside. So first rule is just because it's warm out does not mean you have to move your plants outside. If they're comfortable and happy and living inside and it's a pain in your butt to get them out, don't feel like you have to take them out just because it's summer. Because what you introduce them to is there's insects inside. So you might be bringing in some mealybugs, some aphid, scale, whatever. But also you're going in that shock. It's the shock of them going out into high humidity, high temps, high sunlight, and then you shock them again when you bring them back in. So I have plants that I know are through through killing several of them. I know that they don't transition well. So I've just stopped putting them out and I put them in a high light, and maybe they don't grow as much as they would if they're outside, but then I don't get those big shocks. So I think kind of overall over the years I've received the same amount of growth on them that I would have if I had been bringing them in and out. So that's my first little PSA. You don't have to put them outside if you don't want to. I don't know, Ray, you've got some indoor house plants. What do you do with them?
Try to keep them alive basically for the next 3 or 4 months. Some of us were having a little bit of a discussion earlier. For the past couple of years, I've had trouble with, mealybugs. And a lot of that prep work, and I realize that it's a little too late now. We've had hard freezes here in Kentucky throughout the state. We've had those hard freezes, so you've already moved your tender plants in that need to come in for the winter. But I need to do a better job, and that includes this year, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I need to do a better job of making sure that all of those pests, or as many of those pests as possible, are off the plants before I move them in, because I think that kind of prep work in moving the plants inside is really, really important. And one of the best things I've done in the past is, and it's worked great for me because I have some big containers, and you'll be shocked at all the critters that will live in the container, especially in the bottom if you have saucers and things on those. Is one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I've done to help, because a lot of the pests can be in the soil. I mean, from earwigs to I had snakes
Ugh.
in the bottom of big containers. But one of the yeah, true story. One of the
Ugh.
things I have done to preparing plants to bring them on the inside is kind of soak that for 20 hours, 10 to 20. And I've actually done that with my larger plants and everything, all the things that breathe that I don't want on the inside of my home. Either flush thoroughly, or soak them
Mm.
for several hours
Hmm.
before I bring them in. And that's done really well for me. That's my larger plants. Now I had tubs and stuff at the time, and that was a little easier for me to do. Otherwise, it can sort of be a pain. But another thing that I do, I was bringing in some, I don't know, some fancy leaf. ivy in, and that stuff just grew so much. And one of the prep things I always do with like the ivies and even, pothos and stuff, because everyone knows how the golden pothos, I think in my case, how much that stuff grows, is I trim everything before I bring it on the inside. So I kind of go through all of my plants. I look for mealy bugs and I kill all of them that I can with a vengeance. I will throughout
Burn it with
the
fire. Not
I
really, but
know,
like
that's the way I
think about it
feel,
while you
though,
do it.
that's the way I feel, but, that's much easier to do on the outside. Is we've got a lot more options for, strong water streams that you couldn't necessarily do on the inside to wash some of these insects off that you don't want. We have a lot of options on the outside, whether it's an
Mhm.
insecticide or just jets of water,
Mhm.
but we have a lot of options. But once you bring them on the inside, my options become really limited. So I do all of that, try to do all of that prep work. But even that being said, I noticed that my wife, Jennifer, brought in, I was real careful with my set of plants on the front porch, and she's got some on succulents on the back porch. And I hope she doesn't listen to this episode because
You
under the
calling her
trend she
out.
goes. I am. But I
Dragon.
noticed today when I was making my little cup of coffee before this because I needed caffeine for that energy boost for this episode. But I
All
looked
for
at
you,
this
thanks.
house leek and it has mealy bugs all over
Ugh.
it,
Ugh.
Mm.
everywhere. And I'm like, no. So I'm quarantining
The
that thing. I've moved it. I'm going to get in trouble. I put it all the way in the corner of the kitchen where there's not sufficient light. And I don't know. I've got to assess my options. There are some options there that I'm
I
sure we'll talk
saw
about. But oh my gosh, guys,
so
mealy bugs.
yeah, and Ray, that's a really good point. Bringing that you soak your plants and like
Mhm.
let like essentially drown them for a
Mm.
little
Yeah,
while.
to
Or
give it a
drive
critter,
them
but
up and
also
out.
salt.
Yeah,
Kind
huh?
of there's different reasons for that. Yeah, to get
Yeah,
rid of
yeah.
help
You
the
can
salt
leach
levels and
out some
yeah.
salt levels. Some plants, a lot of our tropical plants are more sensitive to salts that are in our tap water and things. So you can leach them out. Using rainwater is always a good option, but it also insects need to breathe, and so by doing that, you're drowning them. Now, don't do it for more than a couple hours because roots also need to breathe. So you got
Yeah.
to be a little bit
You
careful of
have to
that.
know the plant you're doing that with, and some plants
Yeah.
will not respond well to
Right.
that.
And you want to give them enough time to dry out before bringing them in because
Yeah.
number one, it's going to be heavy. And number two, when they do come
Mhm.
inside, and we're going to talk about this kind of the low light levels, things like that will cause that root system to stay, wet longer. But
Mm.
one thing I saw that I love a good systemic treatment on my,
Mhm.
when you bring them in, it's systemic. That's usually like a granular or something that you're watering in.
Mhm.
And those plants uptake that pesticide through their leaves. It's a lot safer if you have pets. So a lot of people have, cats and stuff that they don't want getting pesticide on them. But for those of you, I always like to have lots of different options, and one that's good for like mealybug and scale is if you have a small pot that's like relatively easy to handle. You can dunk the whole plant like we just talked about, submerging the pot in water, right, to get out those
Mhm.
soil critters, but putting just like a little drop of like Dawn dish soap in some like a bucket of
Mhm.
water, just to create like a nice surface, and then dunking like the whole plant, the top growth, down into that water. You can leave the root ball out if you want to. So for this, I'm thinking a lot of those vining plants that can be hard to rinse off and stuff. So
Mm.
dunk them into that and let them, sit in there for 30 minutes or something like that. And then you pull it off, and all those mealybug, those scale, aphids, things like that would fall off into that soapy water. So, and then you just spray off
Mhm.
them again, spray that foliage off. But if you haven't done that, or maybe you
All
have,
of that
maybe
is
you thought
prep
of
work.
you,
Yeah.
all of that is
My
the
wife
prep
didn't
work.
do that. She didn't
Your
do any
wife
of
did
that.
not. Yeah.
On her house leak,
Yeah.
Jennifer did not do any of that. Under the
It,
bus, under the
you
bus.
you
Naming
can, if you've got
names.
small stuff, you
Dropping
can put
names.
them in your bathtub. So
Mm.
there's
Yeah.
been numerous times my husband has come home and been wanting to get in the shower, and he opens the shower curtain up to just plants.
It's like a scary
Plants and
movie.
bugs
Yeah, yeah,
everywhere.
there's just
Yeah.
plants, and dead leaves everywhere. But anyways, so bringing them in, we're kind of past the point of no return. What do you
Mhm.
do
Yes.
to keep them alive? We a lot of time we buy these really nice plants on the summertime. We
Mhm.
splurge on them. They're so pretty. They're so cool. Guilty. I'm talking about me. I'm the problem. And then I bring them in. And I have a forest, a jungle in my living room. But
I
what are
guess I'll
you?
ask you, Alexis,
Yeah.
is it possible to bring any plant that you go and purchase successfully, bring that in and overwinter it? I mean,
I'm
are there just some it seems like there's just some plants that don't do very well no matter how much supplemental light I give them or how I modify the humidity.
yeah.
There's some that you can do this. Pothos is obviously easy to bring on
Mhm,
the inside.
mhm.
It does fine.
I think that every horticulturist, every person, if you're that person who is like, "I have a brown thumb and I kill everything." You do not, and we all have things we kill. So, for example, I think I've told you all this before. I have killed every air plant I have ever owned. Okay?
Because you try
Every
to take care of them.
freaking air plant
You
I have
try to
ever
take care of
owned.
them.
I blame it on the fact that there's no soil. Okay, my brain understands soil. I am a soil scientist. Like I cannot grasp this whole air plant thing, but we all have something. So one of the best horticulturists I know, she can't grow aloe, which is one of the easiest plants for most people to grow. It's one of those beginner house plants. She kills all the aloe. She's one of the most decorative tropical. She runs entire greenhouses and she cannot keep aloe alive. So that being said, maybe you just haven't had found the plant for you.
There's a
But
lot of truth to that. There's a great amount of truth to that. I mean, yeah, there's factors. There's like the secondary factors, like you may be using the wrong type of soil
sure,
amendments or yada yada. But if
sometimes
you
they
really
don't
love
like
to
him, man.
water, you have to. I don't know. My main takeaway for indoor plants is you brought up watering earlier. I mean, there's different ways to water. There's two or three
Hmm.
different main ways to water. My favorite is like when I want to dust them off. I love the shower because you can flush it thoroughly, and don't have to worry about the water getting everywhere on the floor, and then bring it back down. That works good for small plants. But the main takeaway from today is I think I've worked with more people that kill plants once they bring them in, kill plants with overwatering versus
Mhm.
Hmm.
underwatering.
Hmm.
That's the number one problem with bringing plants in to me
Hmm.
is scaling back your water schedule to match the new growing environment and the growth rate of the plant.
And and it's so I can't just tell
It's
you,
hard.
right? Like you can't just you have to learn how to be
Hmm.
intuitive about it. And this is really hard if you are new to like the world of potted plants in general. It can be really hard to be intuitive about knowing that. And I say that because Brett's wife, Annie, she has a bunch of house plants, and I remember I went over to their house one time and she's like, "Can you help me with these?" And I'm like, "That's my thing. Well, let's do it." She's like, "I just want to water them on a schedule." And it's like, it doesn't work that way, you know? Like she's like, "Well, but how do I know?" And so there's the pick up the pot test, which is the easiest one for me. Well, after you water it, pick it up like when it's nice and soaked. You got water running out the bottom. You got the soil looks dark. It's nice and soaked through. Pick that pot up and feel it. Like what does it feel
Hmm.
like? It just feels
Yes.
heavy, right?
Mhm.
Don't water again until that pot starts to feel light. Like it's the easiest thing, and I can't tell you because you have to feel it for yourself.
I think that's the best method is, I mean, people say stick your hand, into the pot to the second knuckle
But
and all these
yeah,
methods. And I struggle with that because sometimes that soil gets hard and dry and I'm like,
yeah,
ouch, that hurts.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the weight of that container will tell you, but you do have to test it when it's heavy and what it feels
Hmm.
like when it's very, very light and hasn't been watered a long time. But your brain will know after a while. You just kind of give it a little scoot or lift the edge of it up if it's a large plant. And that's my favorite method of
And
telling when I need to water.
I think bi- it's simple. It's simplify it because most of the time you're overthinking it. Like plants
Hmm.
are ultimately very like relatively simple organisms. They need water, they need light, they need nutrients, and a lot of that they make for themselves. So really, it's the water and the light that you're most concerned with, at least in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And so, if you understand the basics of photosynthesis, you know that they're not going to use that water up unless they're getting enough
Mhm.
light. So, therefore, we lose light in the winter, right? We know we have less hours of daylight. A lot of those daylight hours are cloud covered, and those plants are inside. So, you kind of have this triple
Mhm.
threat
Mhm.
of lack of light. So, you kind of have to say naturally thinking, well, if I watered it once a week outside when it was in full sun, I'm
Mhm.
probably going to water it once a month with all
And
Right.
of these things
that's what
stacked up.
gets people as they stay on the same schedule. Even
Yeah.
experienced growers,
Yeah.
if you're experienced growing plants on the outside, let's say annuals every year that you do not overwinter, if all of a sudden you get a fern or something, you want to bring it in, is you continue on that same schedule and then you overwater,
Mhm.
and it's a problem. But question I'll pose for you guys is this: when you're watering, do you put the water in a container and let it come to temp, or I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Anybody with any thoughts as far as matching. Like, I don't put really hot water, really cold water on plants. I know
Mhm.
it doesn't make a big difference. The way that you water probably matters more, top water versus bottom water. But that's something that some plants are a little bit sensitive to that. So I usually set the water out for two reasons. Number one, come to temp, so that I'm not shocking anything if I'm giving a pretty good
Mhm.
dose of water in large plants. But also the chlorine content will decrease just a bit
Mhm.
if that's been sitting out for a week or two.
Hmm.
Any comments on any of that, or the
Well,
way that you water top versus bottom? Anything? Watering, I think, is a good place for us to start with this conversation today, because it's so important.
well, you're talking about come to temperature, like kind of come to room
Room
temperature.
temperature, yes,
Yeah,
over time.
because
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
typically you're starting with something that's much cooler, right? It's
Yes,
wintertime. Yeah.
yeah, can be, especially in the wintertime, because the water travels through lines that are pretty close to frozen ground when it's
Right.
cold outside. So the water can be really, really cold
Mm,
in the winter. I don't see it have a big impact, but larger containers, I have observed that it may be affecting things somewhat. So in the last several years, I'll sit the container out and it's just ready to go,
mm,
and it also helps me
I
monitor my water levels.
I think about watering. This is like the weird thing that I do. I always think about my plants and when I would need to water them while I'm brushing my teeth.
mm.
Hmm.
I don't know
Cool.
why. It's just like I guess I'm bored while I'm brushing my teeth, so I'm the one who
Well, and
like
it's just
walks
once a
around.
month, right? So,
Yeah, that's only once every 3 weeks,
Um,
so no big
so
deal.
I'm walking around the house, like, brushing my teeth one and like trying to do something I definitely cannot do one handed because I ADHD when I brush my teeth. Like, it's funny. So
yeah.
I do not have the forethought because I'm gonna water while I'm brushing my teeth, and so I don't have the forethought. So I just use like lukewarm water. Like I just
Mm,
when I get it right out of the tap. But that being said, I do not have plants that are overly sensitive to
mm.
tap water. I definitely don't do
Yeah.
cold. I know a lot of people are going, I use ice cubes on my orchid. And I'm like, look,
Mm.
have I thrown ice cubes in my jade plant because the dog didn't eat them? And so they're right there and I throw them in the pot?
I
Yes.
I don't waste ice. It
I'm
goes in
not
the
going to
plant
waste it.
somewhere. Yeah.
But I'm not going to put it on like my vining plants where I'm going to put an ice cube right on top of like foliage. I also don't use
That's a
that
good
in,
point. Foliage plants.
yeah,
Can you
you can
talk
burn
about
them.
that for a second? I mean, do you water those like with a like a pistol type spout, or do you like bottom water any of your plants? Because foliage plants and some succulents, they just don't seem to like it.
Yeah.
Do you bottom water any plants?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I will water through their saucer if I
Okay.
can. I
Yeah.
have a like a tree. Like it looks not an actual tree. It's a thing I hang all my plants on. So I have a lot of hanging baskets that I can't bottom water. So
Mhm.
I use like a fine little spout to get in there. Honestly, I also my thing that I have this really lovely watering can that somebody bought me and it like works really really well and the thing I use the most often to water is an old Fiji water bottle because
Yes.
Just dump it on
it's
there.
just the
Glacier water.
it's just the right size like
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
my hand but it also holds enough water and that's
Mhm.
just what I use. So
You could probably monitor pretty well too in that clear bottle that you're really used to. You can monitor how much you're putting on.
yeah. So but
Sometimes if I use a big watering
and
can,
so
I
then like
get carried
watering,
away.
right? We talked about like you decrease during like so for an example, like when we get into winter, I water no more than twice a month. My plants
Mhm.
and some of them only get once a month if they're smaller or if they're more, they're getting less light, something along those lines. But there are plants that I have right by a heat register because I have a
Mm.
register right underneath the sunniest window, and I have some full sun plants that I put in that window. They get watered. They're going to get watered for sure twice a month because they're getting a lot of extra heat, and
Mhm.
that's going to dry that soil out. So we talked about light, but you also have to talk about the fact that when you turn your heat on in the winter, it's like the freaking Sahara Desert from a humidity
Oh,
Right.
standpoint.
I
Right.
have some plants that's the best. It's the best window I have, which unfortunately is east facing. And when we talk about light here in a little bit, we'll get into more of this, but it's an east facing window, not great. But it's the best window for being a big window that I can crowd, my plants around. But there's a heat register right there.
Mhm.
So once upon a time, I did a lot of reading on misting and looked into that a whole lot more. And I was not encouraged by what I read about misting as a method of increasing humidity. And from what I could read from, verifiable result type studies, is that you can mist, and then that works really great for 5 to 8 minutes, depending on
Mhm.
how you mist, unless it's a constant micro dose of mist. I mean, do you guys have any
Like a
take on that?
humidifier, yeah.
Yeah, humidifier would be is a much better option if you have a humidifier, because most plants are what, 50ish percent, humidity, and our homes in the wintertime are 10 or 20%,
Yeah,
depending on the
Right,
temperature
yeah.
right.
outside. So that's really tough on the tropicals. So
That's a
I
big
was not
one
encouraged by
too.
hand misting,
Yeah,
but
that's a
more of a
big one too
humidifier.
when you're doing that transition. So if you've brought your plants in, it's been probably 2 weeks, maybe you've had your plants inside, for those of you in Kentucky, and so you're probably just now, or you're gonna maybe by the time this comes out, have started to see some browning around the edges, like things to get
Mhm.
a little crispy in there. That is most likely humidity. Okay, so
Mhm.
first of all, don't water more. It's most likely humidity problem. So you can cluster your plants. So if you've got several house plants, put them close together.
Mm,
Those plants
Mhm.
naturally respire out of their leaf surface, so they increase their own humidity.
yeah, you're making like a little
Yeah.
Yeah,
microclimate there.
little
Yeah,
microclimate, and it seems silly because you're like 3 plants together is not going to make a difference, but it's
they're
kind of like,
buddies.
But
well,
if
it's
you
like,
water all 3 of those with 3 Fiji bottles, then you have 3 Fiji
well,
bottles of moisture going somewhere.
and
So, yeah.
the other thing I think of is like, okay, well, water freezes, at 1 degree temperature difference. So like 1% more
Mhm.
humidity could mean the difference between a
Yeah.
plant. Like,
I try to cluster mine just for that.
so,
That's one of the reasons it's around a heat register. They need all the help they can get, but
but
there's
yeah.
some of those are big containers, so I do that in hopes that maybe it
Mhm.
makes a difference. Maybe it
Well, and
does.
then if you're, you can put dishes. I've done this for, and I'm no
Mhm.
orchid expert. I'm learning on the fly. I have killed plenty. I have some that I've had for years and they've never bloomed, but they're still alive. So I'm trying a new thing this year. But, anyways, putting them where they can have bottom water. So that water is, what's the word I'm looking for? The water. What happens to water when it turns to a gas? Evaporate. Thank you.
Evaporation?
Evaporate,
It
yeah.
evaporates. But
I
I
drew a
was like,
blank,
You
sorry.
always wanna say
I was like,
evapotranspirate.
yeah.
yeah, evapotranspiration, slightly different, but I was like,
How
what
could
is
water
she asking?
evaporate
Yeah.
without a plant?
With that, I
Yes.
don't understand plants only. So, but you're not
Mhm.
submerging that pot in water. You're
Yeah.
just kind of maybe sitting that pot on a rock, and then
On gravels to elevate it just
yeah.
above. So
So
you're
it's
just
not.
using that saucer as a just a because it's gonna turn into a gas eventually if the
Mhm,
air's dry.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
right.
I've read that is a much better option than just hand misting.
But
It's
I
way
think
more effective.
I think you really only need that for like more specialized plants. So like
Yes.
your epiphytes, like an orchid that
Mhm.
you
Know
know,
your plants and their
or an air
needs,
plant
yeah.
or something like that.
Yes.
The other hint I give when I give like a 2 hour long houseplant talk, so I could go on and on about this. But one of the things I say is, you got this plant, you probably have a tag with it, so you at least know what its Latin name is. Look up where it's native to. It's the easiest
Mhm.
thing. If you're like, Alexis, I don't know, I put it at the heat register and it seems to do fine, or I put it over here. Where is it native to? Is it native to the desert? Is it native to the jungle? I've said this before and I'm going to keep saying it until everybody
Mimic its
figures it out.
environment.
And then mimic its environment to the best of your
Mhm.
ability. So do you need it to be more humid? In the dead of winter, I cluster my plants together and I put a humidifier on every day.
Hmm.
But like, I those are very important plants to me. All the other
Yeah.
ones that aren't that important, I'm like, they'll look bad all winter and then in the spring they'll look better. It's
I've
fine.
worked with some homeowners and the Orchid Society there in my county that I work in, and some of them do this, but they have the big humidity tents and they monitor
Mhm,
that with, different monitors, but they go to the extreme of doing that with plants that require more of a jungle type environment.
mhm,
They get that humidity up, they vary their nighttime, daytime temperatures by 10 to 12 degrees. I mean, very specialized. Obviously,
mhm,
there's not a lot of people going to go to that length to take care of plants, but these are very valuable plants to these
mhm.
folks, and they do that. They use a tent to
Well, it's their
capture that
passion.
humidity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
they
are their
love it, and
babies.
it's so
Yeah.
cool. I mean, they use grow lights and supplemental lighting, and they manage all the variables to do a really good job.
Which we haven't talked about light yet.
No, that
Like,
that
we've talked
probably should
about
be next. Yeah, sunlight. What about that? In wintertime, days are getting shorter. Yeah.
So all of my full sun plants, they get priority in my windows. I don't know about you
Mhm.
guys, but in my well, I don't have a south facing window, but the most
Southwest.
like
West is good too.
southwest,
Yeah.
they
Perfect.
get my west facing windows,
Mhm.
and then everybody else gets moved out. I should pull up. I'm gonna pull that up while you all
And you
banter,
made
but
a
I have
comment
this.
earlier that you elevate them too, don't you? And I never thought about that, but after you said that, you said, was it you that has the plant stand? You have a
Yeah,
lot of plants on
I
plant
have
stands.
several. Yeah.
And I went back and did some reading and oh my gosh, and I have plant stands, but I didn't realize like on an average window is at a certain height in most homes.
Hmm.
Like the window
Mm,
doesn't start at the floor level unless it's a
right.
patio door or something. But what a huge difference a plant stand makes by elevating that plant into full exposure to the actual level of the window.
Well, and in winter, like the sun is lower on the
Yes.
horizon, so you get
So
that
it's
much more.
coming at the plant,
Mhm.
more of a direct on angle. So that's one of the things that I encourage folks. Number one is don't be like me. I only have good east facing windows. That's not desirable. It's more of a south or southwest facing windows tend to be better in the winter. But the next thing you can do, like Alexis has, is have some kind of plant stands to bring those plants up for that reason you just mentioned, Josh, that
Mhm.
the angle of the sun is actually coming down in the
Mhm.
wintertime. So that's going to have a direct shot at the plants. And that really does increase the exposure the plants to that in better quality of sunlight, better angle. They just get more sunlight overall. Yeah.
So when I give this big talk for master gardeners on houseplants, I have a slide on lighting, and that has been the most
Mm.
helpful because it's like, okay, put it in the window. Well, you run out of
Doesn't
if
mean
you're
a whole
me,
lot.
you run out of space in a window, and you're like, okay, where
Mhm.
else can I put this, and like how far? So I found this years ago, and it was super helpful. So there's two things to think about when for plant growth, right? There's duration of light and there's intensity of
Intensity.
light, right? So it's the amount of hours is your duration. The intensity is going
Hmm.
to be full sun versus full shade kind of thing. So if you're trying to mimic a full, like as much full sun as you can indoors for a full sun plant, that's within 2 foot of a south facing window.
Hmm.
So if you have a window that's east facing, you need it in the window, right? And you're still not probably going to reach maximum capacity, but
Hmm.
that's kind of the equivalent. If you have a plant that does better with kind of some direct sun, or maybe some like if it was outside, it would like afternoon shade, kind of those morning sun, afternoon shade scenarios. You would want that plant where you're going to see sun rays on the leaf surface for a couple hours a day. So
Hmm.
I have a dining room table that's maybe 5 feet away from the window, and for an hour or two a day I can see rays of the sun hitting it, but other than that it's just kind of bright in there.
Hmm.
And then if you're talking about a shade plant, so an example of this would be like a ZZ plant or a snake plant a lot of people have. You want to be able to read a newspaper in that room without additional lighting for
Mm.
5 hours a day. So that means you can put it over in the corner, as long as if you were in the corner, you could pretty
Read your
easily
paper.
read your paper, right, without additional light. And then essentially anything worse than that is not going to be ideal, especially in wintertime. In the summer, you might be able to get away with it, but in the wintertime, like my bathroom really doesn't have a window and I have no plants in there, and it kills me inside because it's the best humidity area in your whole house is your bathroom.
Yes.
I have a
It's
friend who
tough.
has the most beautiful staghorn ferns that she like mounts on wood and puts them in her bathroom, and they just thrive in there. But she has like 3 windows in her bathroom. So I'm very jealous. And she has like white and it reflects all the
Supplemental
light. And
light,
I'm,
do you guys
Yeah,
provide that,
right, right.
Alexis? Josh, with any kind of plants on the inside, you guys provide I know there's all I mean, incandescents technically can provide some, white source of light. It takes different spectrum of light for the
Yeah, there's
plants
like
to do
the
really well.
cool and the warm and the full
The
sun
reds,
and
the
all that kind of
blues,
stuff.
and the
Right.
white spectrum, but
mhm.
do you guys get into any of that? For the first time, I was just telling Josh before you hopped on, Alexis, that I ordered there's this one big, and I've talked about it before. This, and it's gotten huge. It's Barbados lily.
Mhm.
I've ordered actually a light with a timer designed
Mhm.
for that. It's full spectrum
Mm.
light, and it's 300 or 400 watt equivalent. It's an LED array, so it's 20 watts, I think, actual. But it's just for this one plant, and I'm very curious to see what a difference that makes
Mhm.
for me, because this one particular plant just looks terrible because it's a light lover. It
Mhm.
just looks terrible I mean, I take it outside and it takes it a month to recover. So
Right.
I'm going to see if that makes a difference. And the cool thing I noticed about a lot of these newer plant lights, and I hadn't looked into it in a while, is they have built-in timers, like, right
Mhm.
within in line with the cord, like 3 9-hour, 12-hour timers. It'll come on and off and sort of take care of itself. But you guys
Mhm.
get into any of that? It seems like, Lexus, you said you have, like,
Yeah.
a type of that.
I It depends on what I'm doing. I've got
Yeah.
a whole mess of different things.
Mhm.
One year I started all my amaryllis inside, and I had a rack that had lights on it. And blah blah blah. I would say I actually was just telling somebody this morning. A coworker of mine was like, "I'm gonna bring these plants in, and what do I need to do?" So I would say if you're gonna get into lights, and you have, let's say you have a nice floor lamp that you're like, I want to hang my plant under this floor lamp, whatever, and it only has one bulb. Invest
Mhm.
in just getting a grow bulb. You can get them at, box stores, and you only got one option. You can buy the grow
Please
bulb. They're
notice the
usually,
wattage on those. Some of those get really hot, I noticed.
yeah,
The
yeah,
grow bulbs, because you won't think it'll look a little different, but you'll get it, and it's a 20 watt, but it's 400 watt equivalent, and it gets hot.
yeah, they do
Some of
get hot.
Wow.
those I noticed, so I
So they're
caution
not
people.
like LED, or they are, but they're still
They're
getting
a
that hot?
LED array, a lot of those. They'll have an
Mm.
array with different
Mm,
light emitting diodes of different color spectrums within,
mhm,
like, they look like a bug eye, a lot of those. Is that right,
mhm,
Alexis? Like, they
mhm.
look different,
Yeah.
but some of those get warm, yeah, but so you can get the regular screw
You
in,
can
like,
get just like a
okay,
screw-in light
gotcha.
bulb that is a grow light, so it's a full
Mhm,
spectrum bulb. Now, if you have I have 2 things that, I like, and one of them is if you have the ability, maybe you're going to go out and buy a light fixture, or the light fixture you have takes more than one bulb, you can get a warm bulb and a cool bulb, and that is your full spectrum that you need.
mm,
So, like, I have shop lights, I have some on in my office right now, and these are the ones I use on, like, my rolling racks that I might start my seeds with or something like that. We can do a whole seed episode if you guys want, but
oh, it needs to be done.
I just, those cheap shop lights that you get at the box store, and you just hang
Mhm,
them up, and they take 2 bulbs, and I buy the one cheap warm, one cheap light, or warm and cool, and you plug them in, and they're the full spectrum. And so I'll put a timer on those, and I'm looking for 12 hours a day,
mhm,
and you're good to go with that. And those are usually cheaper, but if you already have the lamp or whatever it is you're using, and you're just
yeah.
buying one bulb, then that's probably a cheaper route. So,
I
like,
had a lamp in the past. It was a kind of an old school lamp, 20 years old or so, but it had the 3 different angles, and I loved it
mhm.
for this. You
Oh,
get
yeah, I
the
have,
lower
yep.
wattage grow bulbs, but it was kind of the old classic reading style that you could point
Mhm,
the 3 lamps in
mhm,
individual directions, and it was
mhm,
so perfect because it was about 62, 65 inches tall.
mhm,
Was perfect, and I probably need to get one of those back. The thing I loved about that versus some of them, the one piece grow lights, like, if
mhm,
the bulbs go out, like, then you have to throw the whole thing away. The
mhm.
thing I like about what you're saying, Alexis, is it uses a standard bulb base,
Yeah,
Mm.
and you could just screw those into
mhm.
to so that's the 2 big differences.
I
One's the
did get
integrated, yeah.
Yeah, I did get, just because my plant collection has gotten too large,
Is there any such
for
Shocker.
thing?
being
According
inside.
to
Yeah,
who?
I'm not supposed to be bringing plants home anymore, but,
I could
I
see that.
said, "Well, I'm gonna keep bringing plants home, but I promise not to bring home any more coffee mugs." So now
Mm.
they're all at my office.
Balance. It's all about
Anyways,
balance. The plants and coffee mugs, problem solved.
so, now I've started to hang them on walls as decoration. That's where I'm at with my plant collection. So, I don't have, like,
Not coffee
paintings and
mugs,
things. It's
but the
just
plants on the
it's just
walls. Oh,
plants.
wow. Wow.
I had to get, like, a different stand, right? And I wanted to elevate them, getting them closer to the window, and I just needed more space. So I have this stand that is multi-tiered, and it's real cool, but I found this little clip-on, and it has, like, 3
Oh, I
bendy,
saw
like,
those,
Oh.
octopusy
yeah,
looking
after I
things.
Mhm.
talked to you, I went and checked
Yeah,
those out, and
and it
those are super neat.
And it wasn't expensive, and it does red and blue light, and, like, I can
Does it have
set
a
it on a
timer on it or
timer.
anything?
Yeah, it
It
has, like,
does?
a
Oh,
Awesome,
wow.
6,
awesome.
9, and 12 hours,
Mhm,
and so I just set it and forget it. The only weird part is, like, sometimes if I get up early, it's dark outside, and, like, there's a red and
Glow.
red and blue glow coming from my dining room. And I'm like, my
Nice.
neighbors probably think I'm growing all kinds of illegal things in here.
Yes. Yes. You have your
It's
greenhouse,
really just
Aussie
for my baby
greenhouse.
rubber tree.
Yeah.
Well,
But
so now,
yeah, the supplemental light I'm kinda getting into. I've not done a whole lot of that, but I want my plants to look a little nicer going back onto
Mm.
the front porch next year, so
how would you say those lights are to kind of be in the same space with? I mean, I know Alexis like thinks of herself as somebody who is invading the plant space, so she doesn't want to bother them. But if you were trying to, let's say, live a normal life,
that's
having
a
these
good
lamps around, do
point.
they bother you, like being in these
I
spaces?
think
Do
if
you?
they're adjustable, because I guess the
Mhm.
rule of thumb is the one thing that you're doing is all of
Mhm.
these lights need to be adjustable so the light emitting portion of this
As
unit that you're working with
close to
needs
the
to be
plant.
close to the plants.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So the way that I do it, Josh, and that is a big consideration for me because where I've clustered my plants is in the living room. It's sort of a rectangle shaped living room. On one end of the living room is where the plants are clustered, and the TV's like on the other side of the living room. I don't want this 400-watt
Mhm.
light like giving off a
Right.
tremendous glow. So I do
Mhm.
angle that a little bit, pointing back towards the window. So
Mhm.
the neighbors are probably going to be freaked out when I get this thing. But yeah, I don't want that. So that was a big consideration when picking out the lights. Is I want that
Yeah.
customizability to be able to angle that away from me because I cannot imagine that shining in your face.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Right.
Yeah,
mine are like, yeah, angled away from me. I would
perfect.
say that because they're on sometimes during the night, like I like get up to
Mhm.
pee or whatever. The red and blue lights, of course, that's what they use in the dark, right? Is a like
Yeah.
you're using a red flashlight, so it's not like a
Hmm.
shock to the
You don't
system.
see that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, when they're on, and I have kind of like I have a small house and it's real open, and so they're not that far away from me, and they're opposite of the TV, so they would
Right.
reflect if they were too bad. But yeah, I have them facing the wall
Hmm.
where they're so flexible, and
That's my plan.
even the shop lights, like when they're on, they're so, like Ray said, they're close to the plant, so
Mhm.
they're not really bothersome. So yeah, I mean, a floor lamp might be bothersome. I just use that as an example for something that, like, if you already have.
But a lot of the floor lamps, several models, like we were talking about earlier, can be angled, and you can angle those away from your line
Mhm.
of sight.
Like you could
Yeah.
create some kind of a barrier so it's not
Yes,
Yeah.
like
you wouldn't want it shining
intruding.
direct because most of these bulbs tend to be higher intensity bulbs.
Right.
They tend to
Yeah, I
be
was thinking that
brighter.
because when it uses that blue light, because blue light is really
Not good
high
for you.
energy and hard.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It kind of messes with your eyes, especially late at night. Whereas like red light is pretty calm and
Yeah.
doesn't.
I never have the blue light on by itself. I can turn red on by itself, blue on
Mhm.
by itself, or red and blue combined. And so I do red
Mhm.
and blue combined, and that like tempers it enough where it doesn't, I don't even
Right. Right.
notice, except for I'm like, wait, what?
I'm jealous of my
Suddenly.
office setup. I
Yeah.
have the Grow Lab, the typical, like it's like a
Oh,
6
yeah.
foot Grow Lab multi-tier, but it's got the custom made, LED bulbs that have come down in price quite a bit. But I would
Mhm.
Right.
love to have something like that at home, but I don't. So I'm getting this floor lamp, and if I like it, I'm going to get a couple more because it won't do all of my plants
Mhm.
because I want to keep it close to the plant level of the plant. So we're going to see how this goes. And I could get if I get a suntan, you guys will know why. But I've set up a
I'm
tanning bed
laughing
close to my
because
TV.
I love this, because I just think about the fact that I still have from last winter when I was growing these amaryllis on a rolling rack. Like, it's just not like, it's not even cute. Why do I still have this in my house? But yet I'm like, what if I need it, And I don't
Mhm.
need that. Like, I have a greenhouse
Plant
outside
hoarder.
now, but here
Plant
I am,
hoarder.
and I'm like, I'll just, and it's ugly. I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
It's because there's not enough plants all
There's
over
not
it.
enough plants on it. That's why.
We
Actually, I
we
have my mushroom buckets on it right now. So,
Perfect.
Well, maybe a good way to kind of sum up would be to talk about what, and I'm sure the true answer is always it depends. But when it comes to selecting the site for bringing your plants in and where you place them, kind of what's your most important resource?
My
Is it
hierarchy
light?
would be
Is
the
it
sunlight. Yeah,
sunlight? Then
that
like
comes first.
draftiness, or
Yeah,
what?
you
I would
don't
say whatever is the hardest for you to mitigate. So if you
mhm,
have a lot of natural light and it's comfortable for your plants to be there and like live amongst you, then put
Mhm.
them there. But if it's easier for you to put a humidifier on something and maybe close a vent, and supplement light. I mean, I think all of these things can be supplemented. Of course,
Mhm.
natural is the best way, but when it comes down to it, they can be supplemented. So whatever
Mhm.
makes it so that you can enjoy them. I know,
Mhm.
Josh, like in my house, plants take priority, but the
It's
corgis take
really a house of
priority.
plants that, like, somebody lives
I
in
live in
sometimes.
their home.
Caretakers live there for the plants.
So I am their caretaker. Yeah. But for most of people, you don't want them to be in your way, but you also want them to be somewhere where you can enjoy them. You're enjoying that extra good
Mhm.
oxygen that they're giving you,
Mhm.
and you see them, so you're paying attention. Oh, hey, he looks extra
Right.
crispy, or there that one's wilted.
That died 6 months ago.
That tides it. Yeah, you don't want that. You want it to be like before it gets to that point. So everything can be supplemented, but yeah, I would say my top one would be light.
Mhm.
But like Ray was just saying, there's lots of light options if
Yeah.
you got a plug close by. So
And that's what I'm having to manipulate. The best sunlight exposure for me would be the sliding glass door to my
mhm.
back deck area, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, we have to walk through there, and I
And it
don't want.
probably gets like a
It's
little bit
drafty.
drafty there,
It's
right? Yeah,
drafty,
like
so my
cold.
best spot for sunlight, that is exactly why I'm purchasing this supplemental light, because there's a better spot for them that has some light.
Mhm.
So I'm
Mhm.
kinda making the best of an okay situation. So we've talked about the water and the sunlight. How about just take a minute or 2 on fertilizer? What's going on there, guys? I know you probably cutting back on water. What about fertilizer?
So that one I think is a little bit of a trick question because we do have
Mhm.
plants that bloom in the winter. So I'm thinking
Mhm.
Thanksgiving cactus, Christmas cactus, Easter cactus. So I want you to first think, remember we said go back to where that plant is from. Is that plant gonna bloom during the winter? And if so, then you actually want to bump up your fertilizer. But the other 90% of plants that we are having at home, you don't really need to fertilize during the
Mhm.
wintertime, but do want to fertilize first thing in the spring. So once that light starts to really increase, usually that's like end of March, early April, you can boost them. I like a slow release fertilizer because I'm going to forget otherwise.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, if you don't fertilize because you forget in the winter, even for those Thanksgiving cactus and things like that, it's better to forget about it than to overdo it because you'll get a lot of
Mhm.
salt buildup this time of year.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that I mean, that's pretty much everything I have seen on this is, like, back off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything
Less
slowed
Unless
down.
fertilizer,
Yeah.
less
unless you're like
water
me and you're growing plants and water all over your walls. And in that case, if you are
everywhere.
that the whole like a lot of people are into, and I'm just like getting into this thing called leca balls for your media. So there are plants that will do well in a essentially in just growing in water, right? As long as they have the ability to have some air pockets, which is what these leca little
Mhm.
leca balls, they look like little marbles but made out of like clay essentially.
That's the
Mhm.
reddish sort of terracotta
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
Uh-huh.
balls,
and so
yeah.
they hold air pockets and they just let the roots kind of get what they need to
Weird.
do. But anyways, if you are growing in a pure water situation, you probably do need to have just the smallest amount. I mean, it's so diluted that you almost don't even notice it added to your water in that case. But that's kind of a
Yeah,
special
it sounds like
scenario.
whoever's getting into that should hopefully know
Highly
that.
specialized.
It's
That's
not
the
something you
orchid growers.
Yeah,
stumble into.
I just bought
Yeah.
some liquid fertilizer because I like the slow release, but I just bought some
Yeah,
liquid
in the
just for that
wintertime, I like
reason.
the slow release, even I go very light on it, but it's based on watering, so if you're watering less, you're
Hmm.
also
Yeah.
releasing that slower,
Fertilizing
so it
less,
sort
yeah,
of balances out in some cases if it's a good high
a lot more
quality
user
coated.
friendly. Yeah.
Yes, and it is buffered, so it's not as, hot, it's not as
Hmm.
not such a
You're not going to
splash
burn
effect
your
on the.
roots. Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing for those maybe we should mention is if you're newer to bringing plants in from the outside, if you have small children or pets, any
Mm,
concerns there? I know Alexis, you have some little fur babies.
I mean,
Do they eat
any
your plants?
no,
Yeah. Do they not chew it? Do they not mess
no.
around with your plants? Good.
Mm-mm.
Good.
But I know cats that do, and I've had a cat like
Mm-hmm.
who does it when she's angry at
Okay.
me.
Mhm.
She doesn't do
So
it any
stay
other
on
time.
good terms with your
Be
cat.
on good terms with your cat, and you'd be fine. But I do know there's some out there, and they like to nom. I would say that you should go to the aspca.org website, and they will tell you what plants are bad for pets. And usually, if they're bad for your pet, they're bad for your small child. I will also tell you that there will be so many plants on there that you're like, how will I ever have a house plant? Because they're all
Yeah.
poisonous. And usually, and again, I'm not a veterinarian, I'm a horticulturist. Usually the answer is yes, this is poisonous, but you have to eat
A lot.
whole plants in order to even vomit from it, kind of thing. Poinsettias are a good example. Everybody knows poinsettias have are poisonous tendencies, I should say. But if your cat chews on one leaf, number one, they're not going to chew on it for long because it's gross and it's going to make them feel gross, and so they might throw up. But usually, as long as you don't have a chronically ill cat, if you have a healthy cat
Right.
or child,
Mentally
whatever,
stable cat, no such
mentally
thing.
stable, or any cat's truly mentally stable, I don't know.
No.
They're gonna be fine. So yeah, don't let your animal eat your entire plant. Watch them, make sure. But if we didn't have any houseplants that were, if we only had houseplants that were safe for our pets, we would pretty much have no houseplants. So
Just be like growing wheat.
yeah, I mean, grow cat grass if
Cat
your
grass.
cat's that
Yeah.
you can grow. It's
Cat
really
mint.
easy to grow. So
Yeah. Have you ever grown like catmint indoors with a cat? Or I haven't even thought of doing that.
cat mint, no. Cat grass, yes. And it's fun because it's essentially like a wheat, and I think it's a rye technically. I don't remember, but it germinates in like 10 days,
Very
and then
quick.
they nom it down, and then you just put another one down, and every 10 days you get a fresh cat grass.
What about catnip?
I have not grown
I've had the
catnip
catnip
before.
balls, and if they react to catnip in the same way as they do the dried catnip balls, then that won't
It's
last
probably not
good.
even safe.
can't
You'd be
imagine.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All over. So that's a consideration sometimes if people bring these, because it's sometimes especially for like cats and children. It's a curiosity. It's something they're not used to seeing. So there's this natural curiousness. And so they wander over into that area where there's all of these green things. So that's just
Sure.
a
Looks like
consideration to
Be
lettuce.
make.
I should
safe.
eat a lot.
Yes.
Well, and like
Kind of be aware of
usually
that.
plants that are poisonous taste bad. So
Like
even if they
high
get a little
latex
bit of it, they're not
content
going to
or,
keep
yeah.
eating it. So
Yeah.
that's where it benefits you. But again, I am not a doctor. So
It's just good to be aware of that. In plant stands, if you have a plant that, let's say, gets bothered by kids or pets, maybe that's a good one for the top
yeah,
of the
you know
plant
what?
stand.
Maybe your plant doesn't like your kid. Okay.
Could be.
Right.
Did you ever think
Could
of
be.
that?
Yeah. Them poisoning your kid is a defense mechanism.
Yes. What have we missed? We've
Welcome.
talked about everything. We've talked about cats and kids and water and fertilizer. Oh my, what have we missed today?
I think we
I think
got it.
that's
Like,
it.
and
Yeah.
if you have questions, like if you have a plant specifically that you can't seem to make happy, you're welcome to, shoot us an email.
Or have an insect problem. I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
big issue for insect identification. All of our
Mm-hmm.
offices can provide those services. That's a big one
Mm-hmm.
because you have limited options in the wintertime if you're going to go insecticides. I mean, there's always insecticidal soaps, horticultural oils, and
Mm-hmm.
like neem oil. There's some good options, but if you need to identify the critters that are bothering those plants, definitely give your local extension office a call.
Or if you just want to know if you have critters in general, like don't
Yes.
go spraying a bunch of stuff. Don't
No.
go watering
Identify
like
first.
crazy. Figure out what's wrong with it first because you could be overwatering or
And
over humidifying
in
or
case you missed it earlier, I have
Identify
a
your
house leak that
problem
has a
before you
problem.
try to solve it.
yes,
Yeah.
that would be great. Absolutely go to your county extension office. If you're in Kentucky, there's one in every county. There's 120. Actually, there's over 120 because Kenton County has 2 offices.
Oh, wow.
So there is one in every county. If you are outside of Kentucky, you do have an extension service because there is one in every state. If you are outside of the U.S., I am not sure, but I'm positive that there is some help relatively locally. Or if you are like, I cannot find those people and I don't trust them, that's fine. You can shoot us an email, horticulturepodcast@l.uky.edu, and that's an email that we all get. So all of us will see it and kind of can brainstorm on that if that's something. And Josh won't just willy-nilly start telling you about house plants without me seeing it first. Okay. But you can also shoot us a direct message, a DM, if you will, on Instagram, Horticulture Pod, and check that out. So contact us either way if you want to know something else that sounds interesting or you want us to go into further depth. We need to do a bonsai episode for
We do.
Brett.
Yes.
That's Brett is the expert, and I would love to learn. I've been getting a lot of videos on tiny bonsai come up on my like social media, and oh my god, they're so cute. I digress. Anyways, we'd love that if you would leave us a review if you like this episode. If you're like, hey, my pothos didn't die this year because I listened to this, that would be great if you just let us know that via a review, because it pleases the algorithm gods and people find the podcast, and hopefully they will like it and also not kill their pothos. So that would be great. Contact us. We love to hear from you all. We appreciate you listening every week, and we hope that as we grow this podcast, you will grow with us. Join us next time. We're going to tell you about a lot of cool upcoming things that are going on in the conference world. Thanks.